This conference will now be recorded.
Good. Okay, so good evening, everybody. I'm going to say hello to those who are here in person, to the gang that we got. Okay, so moving on to kashrut. Okay, kashrut is really one of the major foundations. When we talk about, we talk about the big three, okay? So it would definitely be Shabbos, kashrus, and family purity, right? Those are, hello, Cheryl. Good to see you.
Rabbi, I thought you were coming back tomorrow.
No, no, that's not correct. I came back. You're right about being off one day, but it was one day, it was yesterday. So it was one day off of Tuesday, but it was before and not after. Yeah. Okay.
Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you. Okay, so let's start with the basics. Okay? How do you make something kosher? This is the classic question that people ask you when you're on an airplane with a kippah. Oh, so how do you make something kosher? Right? So what's the answer? How do you make something kosher?
Depends what it is.
Okay. So I would almost start saying, well, if something is kosher, you don't want to mess it up. Okay? But we don't really make, well, I guess in a certain way we do. We can keep something. Well, I guess maybe we do make something kosher.
At least in Shlita.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. An animal, you can't eat it until it's been properly slaughtered. So the slaughtering is what makes it kosher. But you still can't eat it until you shechted it. But even after you've shechted it, you still can't eat it until you're going to draw the blood out of it. What are the means of drawing blood out? Salting or
Gravity.
that one that doesn't pull hard enough, right? Someone suggested gravity, right? So actually, it would be if you roast it right away. That also, right? Not cooking. Cooking, it's in its own juices. That's going to be a problem. Roasting. Okay. I'm sorry.
A barbecue?
Like a barbecue.
But then he would be unkosher in barbecue, probably.
You might not need to. Yeah, you want to do it like over more of a spit than on the. Yeah, but that's not typically what we do. Okay, so let's go back a little. Let's go back a few steps. Okay. What does the Torah tell us about kashrut? The Torah tells us about animals, about fish, and about fowl. So let's start there. Animals, what are the requirements? Split hooves and chews its cud. Okay. Fish, what are the requirements? Scales, fins, right? But if it has scales, then it has fins. Okay? So therefore, right, practically speaking, if you go into a store and they have a whole fish there or a fish sliced in half, and there is a scale on that fish, then you know it is a kosher fish. Okay, you don't need to have the fins. Right? You have the scales, you're good to go. And birds,
They can't be scavengers.
okay. Right? They can't be birds of prey, Prey. Okay? We're all in favor of Pray, but not Prey. Okay? So there, and there the Torah lists those that we can't have. We are not so clear what each of those species are that are mentioned there in the Torah. So basically, we have those species that we know to be kosher birds, and that is what we eat. Okay? What else does the Torah tell us about kashrut?
Milk and meat.
Okay, good. That we can't mix the milk and the meat. Literally, it says, do not cook the gedi, the child, in the milk of the mother, right? But this of course extends to cooking and eating and getting hana benefit from any milk and meat combination. How about insects? Right? So the Torah clearly prohibits insects. What type of creepy crawlies are actually allowed?
Looks like two types of grasshoppers,
Right.
Locusts.
Right. Yes. Certain grasshoppers. Right. But we don't have the tradition as to which ones they are exactly. Yemenite Jews do have that tradition, and they feasibly could eat grasshoppers. I think to most of us, it does not sound all that palatable, right? Okay. I'm sorry?
I said maybe chocolate.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have the chocolate, but not the grasshopper inside. Yeah, personally. Okay. Now, in terms of the practical kosher kitchen, right? So I've never once been asked the question, Rabbi, a pig wandered into my kitchen, so now what do I do, right? So with us, the issue for the most part is the milk and the meat and the bugs. The milk, meat, and bugs. Okay, those are the practical issues that we contend with, right? Because if we're buying meat, we're buying kosher meat from a kosher butcher, right? We're not investigating, we're not checking its hooves, we're not checking how many stomachs it has, right? Birds, we're buying kosher fowl from a kosher butcher. Fish, we're either buying fish that is certified or we're buying salmon, right? You can buy salmon even though it is uncertified. The reason being the color, right? The only fish that have that sort of color are kosher fish. Now, besides the kosher aspect, there's a tremendous amount of counterfeiting that goes on with fish, because certain fish are very expensive, others are very, very cheap, and many people can't tell the difference. Certainly when you're buying it, you can't tell the difference. So there is much counterfeiting that goes on a large scale when it comes to fish. Therefore, even though they might say that it is flounder or that it is sea bass, right? That's not enough that they say that it is, because it could be something far cheaper that they're trying to pass off as a more expensive fish. And that's why you'll either need it with certification or you'll need to see the scale, find a scale on it yourself. If you find a scale on it yourself, but typically we buy fish that either from a kosher fish market or that is certified kosher. Well, again, the exception being salmon, right? One can buy the salmon at Costco, right? They sell packaged, individually wrapped packages with an OU on it, and obviously there's nothing to talk about that. That's perfectly fine. But even the regular salmon, one can buy. Now, what might be a problem with that? And why is that problem not a problem? What might be a problem? Or why can't I go into Ralph's and have them just slice up a salmon for me?
That can be using a knife
Cross
or
contamination.
something.
Okay, right? Right. So Ladero said They might be using a knife that they use for different things. Jackie, what did you say? I'm sorry.
I was agreeing with Ladero. I was saying the cross-contamination.
Cross-contamination.
Cross contamination. Yes.
And they're not doing enough to where it's just using maybe that one specific knife
Okay.
like Costco.
Good. Right. So you go into a regular store, go to the fish counter, right? So there's a lot of juice flowing around over there, right? So that's gonna be problematic. Are they using a different knife for the salmon than they just use for that guy's crab, or that one's lobster, or that one's shrimp? Right? Are they washing it off? How careful are they washing it off? What's it sitting in? Right? So that we typically don't do. Right? Now, what some people could do or still do, but not is they'll go there with their own knife and ask them, can you please use this knife to cut? And rinse off the cutting board, right? Or they often have, right? But typically we're not doing that. In the case of a Costco, like Danielle said, there is not going to be an issue because whoever is cutting the salmon is cutting thousands of salmons. They're not doing lobster, salmon, octopus, lobster. It just goes right. So there one can buy that. Okay. So that's the issue that we have with meat. So we're getting ourselves kosher meats, right? In order for meat to be kosher, as we mentioned before, it needs to come from it needs to be a kosher animal. It needs to be properly slaughtered. It needs to be properly processed in terms of the blood and being removed. Okay. Yeah. Okay. There are certain hechsherim where the standards are not really up to Orthodox Judaism standards, right? So when it comes to meat, the triangle K, right, which is on Hebrew National, is not something that is up to standards, right? Even though there are some Orthodox rabbis who are part of that, right? I believe. Let me just pause this.
Is that where Glatt's kosher?
This conference will now be recorded.
I'm sorry?
I thought that was so interesting.
Yeah.
Because I had no idea that.
Yes.
You could, differentiate. I just thought anything with a triangle K was not.
Right, which is not necessarily the case. Okay. How about when it comes to milk, dairy products? So, what is the Torah law when it comes to dairy products? When it comes to milk?
Must be from a kosher animal.
Correct. If it comes from a kosher animal, then the milk is kosher. If it comes from a non-kosher animal, the milk is not kosher. Very straightforward. Okay? So, how do we know where the milk came from? Right? And that's going to affect, of course, all dairy products. Everything is being made from milk. So, how do we know where the milk came from? So, if it's certified, well, what is Chalav Yisroel?
That's what I was going to say. I said a lot of people, when it comes to dairy, prefer Chalav Yisrael.
Is that when it's supervised?
Okay. So Chalav Yisroel is that it was supervised by a Jew, and therefore we know that this milk is, in fact, from the time it was milked till the time that it was packaged, it's been supervised by Jews, and therefore we know for sure that this is kosher milk, because we know it came from a cow. Okay. In America, Chalav Yisrael is something that some people keep and other people don't keep. right? People who are meticulously kosher might not keep Chalav Yisrael. Okay? Chabad views non-Chalav Yisrael as treif. Okay? The Orthodox world follows the psak, the ruling of Rav Moshe Feinstein, the preeminent posek of the 20th century, who ruled that in America, where there is the strong government agency that regulates the products, and no company is going to have any benefit but tremendous downside of mixing anything else in, any other type of milk into their what they must stamp as being 100% cow's milk. So there's nothing to be gained, but a tremendous amount to be lost. Therefore, that serves as the supervision. That serves as the halachic guarantee that this is cow's milk. And therefore, the OU, which is the preeminent Orthodox union, right? Orthodox supervising kashrut, will give a hechsher, will give certification on what's called chalav stam. Chalav, milk. Chalav Yisroel is chalav that has been watched and supervised by a Jew from beginning to end. Chalav stam is milk that is stam, milk that is milk.
Mhm.
Right? Now, if one travels to an issue that sometimes comes up is that people who grew up in the States, right, live in the States, they have the idea that Chalav Yisrael, oh, that's the stringency. And they go abroad, and there in different countries, they might be mixed. There might not be a strong supervisory government agency. Or even they might actually mix in pig milk, right? I've heard that pig milk actually serves as sours a lot slower, and actually can help serve as a preservative. Okay, here in the U.S., again, the downside is so severe that no company in their right mind is going to, try to sneak in, because then people hear that, that this and that milk X lasts better, right? But when traveling abroad, right, one needs to know that non-supervised milk could very well be usher,
Gotcha.
absolutely prohibited.
Gotcha.
And the same way that you're not going to trust some random guy who says, no, it's been slaughtered properly, right? You're also not going to trust some random person who says, no, it's cow's milk. You need to know.
Yeah.
You need to know what it is.
What about in Israel? Is Israel? Is there any issues with that at all?
No.
That's with Chalav Israel.
It's all Chalav Yisrael.
Okay.
It's all
That's
Chalav
what I
Yisrael.
figured.
It's all Chalav Yisrael. Yes, Esther.
Right. Just for clarification, the Chalav Israel only applies to milk, correct?
Dairy products.
All dairy, okay.
Right? Anything made of milk will be an issue, right? Hershey's chocolate with the OU on it, right? It'll have an OUD on it, okay? Now, have we done this already about the app?
Yeah.
CRC.
Yeah. Okay, so those who have joined on, there are two apps that I would strongly urge you to get. One of them is CRC Kosher. Oops, can you see that? CRC Kosher. It's down over here. Once I open up, I won't be able to see anymore. But it is CRC Kosher, the top row there. Okay, that's the Chicago Rabbinical Council. Okay, that's an excellent app, and also Kosher Quest. Kosher Quest will give you a list of all of the agencies that are recommended. So when you go into a store and you're looking for something to make sure that it has a hechsher, that has certification, okay, so then that will let you know if you come across an unfamiliar certification, that will let you know. The CRC has that as an aspect under agencies, but it also has a product list, which is a wonderful thing. It's updating every time you open it up. And there it'll let you know if things need certification or not. Fruits and vegetables, do they need certification?
No.
They don't. In Israel, they do. Here, they do not. In Israel, it needs to be properly tithed. Lots of things goes into it. Here, they do not. However, but what is the problem? What is the potential problem with fruits and vegetables?
Bugs.
The bugs. Okay? So the CRC app will let you know when it comes to vegetables, if you need anything, if it needs to be checked, and if it does, it'll let you know how it should be checked.
I
Yes.
just had a question about the OUD milk when it comes to like plant-based milk. Is that okay to have when it says OUD? Is that considered fine if it's a plant, like an almond milk or
Yeah, they have
oat
those.
milk? They'll
It'll
say
still have a
OUD
D
on
on
an
it,
almond milk. Like we get an almond milk and it says OUD. We don't know why it says OUD because there's no dairy, but
Okay. So all OUD is good,
okay.
right? If you're not, Chabad is Chabad, but I'm not Chabad, right? So I have no problem with again, the general Orthodox world is you're okay.
Because it technically can't be.
Okay.
I want to pronounce it right. Is it Chalav?
Chalav Yisrael.
Chalav Yisrael.
It's not
It
dairy.
can't be dairy. Like it can't
Correct.
be that anyway.
Correct.
It's not a dairy.
The OUD, okay, the OU used to have OUD, which meant Orthodox Union Certified Kosher Dairy, and they also used to have OUDE, which was OU Dairy Equipment. Okay? With dairy equipment, it's not truly dairy, but if it was processed on dairy equipment, then you wouldn't want to eat that directly with meat. Okay? Then they dropped the whole, they felt that I think it got too confusing, so they dropped the whole DE. And instead, they'll just have OUD, whether it's actually dairy or dairy equipment. Okay? So I'm sure the soy milk and the oat milk or whatever else they have over there is just OU. It's actually dairy equipment, right? You know, even the Oreo cookies are not really dairy. They're right. It says OUD, right? And you could have those, right? You just wouldn't, you just wouldn't put them into your hamburger bun. Yes.
I wanted to share a tip because what I've noticed is when you buy refrigerated oat milk, any kind of alternative milk, so if it's almond, oat, I literally had the exact same brand, and when it's the refrigerated version of it, it's OUD. And then when you buy the shelf version that's not refrigerated, it's just OU.
Okay.
So we
That's
just
good
started
to know.
buying like from the dry shelves
Yeah.
where the cereal is, like it's so much more convenient.
Okay. Well, that's good because I use the carton ones for like if I'm doing something, mixing it for a
Baking.
sauce with the meat because then it's just OU. It's part.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
use it for baking when I'm using just
The carton.
yeah, the
Yeah.
carton ones.
Trader Joe's, their refrigerated almond milk is part
Oh yeah, it's not even, it's OU.
Never tried that.
Exactly. Okay.
of it. Right.
You've heard or you will hear the terms glot kosher. What does glot kosher mean?
has to do with the lungs.
Okay.
Have any holes in the lungs?
Okay.
No, was it not even that? Wasn't it? It's not.
You mentioned holes in the lungs.
And the sciatic nerve or the
Okay.
quarter.
All right. So the sciatic nerve, that's the gid hanasha. That's what the Torah refers to it. That is absolutely forbidden to be eaten. The way it works here in the States, where we have an abundance of meat, is that instead of removing that, which is laborious and difficult, we just send the hindquarters off to the non-kosher. I years and years ago, I attended the Star K had a kashrut training, a kashrut conference, and part of it was going to see shchita, the slaughtering, and what happens over there. Now, it was the funniest thing because the Star K does all of its shchita, and it's like Chris and Mary's meat, right? It's this the farm, and they don't sell kosher meat there, but everything there is shechted. So what happens? The shochtim, as they're called, those who do the slaughtering, are in the back there, and they do shchita, right? The hindquarters goes right off to them, right? To Chris and Mary over there. And they sell it as they want to sell it. If there's any question at all when it comes to the shechita or when it comes to the animal, we'll come back to that in a moment. Don't start asking questions. Just give it to Chris and Mary, right? And so the hindquarters we don't get. Okay, that used to be one of the Hebrew National commercials, right? They're very, very selective. No ifs, ands, or correct. Okay, that was there. That was there. Okay, I'm going to pause again for a second. Sorry.
This conference will now be recorded.
Coming back to Galat kosher. So the hindquarters, that's a whole different issue. Okay, but thank you. But when it comes back now, so glat actually means smooth. Glat is the Yiddish word for smooth. In Hebrew, it's called chalak, smooth. What is that about? So there are different things that could be wrong with an animal, which would render it treifa. Okay, treif comes. We say, oh, it's treif. Treif comes from the word taruf, which means torn. Okay. Tet, in Hebrew, tet, resh, yud, pei, hey. Treifa.
Would that have to do with the knife?
Okay, so one way that an animal becomes torn is if the knife is not perfectly smooth, and the shochet will constantly be checking it with a nail, with a hair, to make sure that, because if it's not perfectly smooth, then when you cut, what happens? You don't slice, you tear. If there's a nick in the knife, then it's going to be tearing it as opposed to a very smooth slicing. Now, there can also be internal tears, right, on some of the organs, which will render this animal incompatible for life. It'll die within a year from that. That will be that will make the animal non-kosher. Okay, so according to halacha, we can rely on chazakos. Chazakos are, we're going with, it's very rare that it has this. Therefore, we don't have to assume that it had it. If there's no indication that it has any of these tears, so then we're good to go. Galat kosher is going to check at least some of these. The most common problem is in the lungs. So what they'll have is, and I saw this when I went to the place with the star K, they have this air port, not an airport, but an air, right, an air pump, whatever it is, and they'll blow up and they inflate the lungs as one would inflate a balloon. And that way you see, is there any air escaping? If there is air escaping, what does that show me? What does the lung have? A tear. It's treif, taruf, it has a tear. Okay? Now, if it's not glatt kosher, it means it hasn't been checked all these things, it's still kosher. However, and I can keep the recording going for this. However, most places, well, I would say the general assumption is if it's not going to be glatt kosher, then they know their clientele is not quite as demanding when it comes to kashrut. So therefore, that can then start to call into question even the shchitas, meaning that a place that's glatt will only do, let's say with chickens, I don't know the numbers, I'm not a shochet. They won't do more than this amount of shechting a minute, right? But a place that is not glatt, right? These guys are going to be paid by the hour, not by the chicken, right? So the more that they can produce, the better the bottom line for the company. So then, right, if you have a less demanding clientele, evidenced by the fact that they're okay even though it's not glatt, so let's do more shchitas a minute, right? So in general, once something is not glatt, we get a little bit more concerned about the overall kashrut that's going on or not going on over there. Okay? But that's the idea of glatt. So if you see a glatt kosher dairy restaurant,
Stay away.
well, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
Okay? Right? But what it means, what it's come to mean in certain situations. Now, you'll never see a kashrut organization that is worthy of the name of a kashrut organization writing glatt kosher on a dairy product. But if you see it by a restaurant, glatt kosher in that context, in a looser context, has become the term that's used for a higher level, right? You know, kosher lemahadrin, right? Mahadrin is those who are even more meticulous, okay? So glatt kosher is often used more broadly for very, very, very high level of kashrut, which can also apply to a dairy, which a high level of kashrut can be applied to a dairy restaurant. But it really makes no sense, right? Like I say, you never see a kashrut organization that will actually stamp that on. Okay. So we have our meat, we have the animals from which it comes, the processing, the shita, and then the salting, right? But we just buy things that are certified. Okay. And we had the kosher and the glatt kosher difference, right? Cheese needs to be kosher, even though, right, you can buy milk without even an OU, even without an OUD. You can buy milk. Why? That's the teshuva of Rav Moshe. Okay? The reason why you need the OUD on the Hershey's chocolate is because, well, a lot of processing went in. It's not just the milk, right? Rav Moshe's heter allowance is just on the milk. Once you start processing, then you need to have certification. So that's why you'll see the OUD. But just milk, if it is RDA? USDA, thank you. USDA, Dairy Department of Agriculture, right, thank you. The USDA, right, and it's stamped and it says 100% cow's milk, then even if it doesn't have an OU or an OK on it, it is okay, right? It's hard to find that these days.
Yeah, it's usually always OU.
Yeah, you almost always will have something with some sort of a hechsher on it, okay? But once you come to any sort of processing, right, so then it needs to have certification, right? So let me just jump in for a second over here. When you go into any supermarket, okay, so your fruits and vegetables are fine. The middle of the store, where they have all of those processed items, anything processed needs to have certification. The CRC app will let you know which things don't need certification. Flour, for example, does not need certification. Sugar does not, right? Plain sugar does not need certification. Okay? The CRC app here, let me just, for example, food list. Okay, cocoa, plain. Acceptable without hashgacha if no questionable additives. Okay, no additives, you're okay. Coconut flour, acceptable without certification. Coconut sugar, acceptable without certification. Corn, raw corn, right, is acceptable without hashgacha, right, and they tell you how to do things. Canned corn requires kosher certification. Why is that? Because it's getting processed. Different things are being added. I mentioned sugar. Lemon juice requires certification. Frozen concentrate are acceptable without hashgacha with no questionable additives. Liquid requires kosher certification. Okay?
So for the salads and fruit that's prepackaged, I think we've discussed this before, but you could purchase like salad packs, but wash it and check it, wash it the 3 times and check it for bugs. Is that correct or no? Like if you're buying a bag of spinach or
Okay.
It has a certification on it.
that does not have
Right. Which, because those things don't have certification.
Mhm.
Okay? Yeah. Let's see what they say about spinach.
Some very rare.
Only ground,
We have
but
some at
ground
Walmart.
Mhm.
Okay. They have with, okay. So if you're buying different things, let's say, you would ask that, I'm sorry.
Salad bags.
Okay. If you're buying salad bags, so when I buy a salad bag, I try to get the one that has iceberg lettuce, carrots, and maybe some radish they put in there also.
Red cabbage.
Red cabbage. None of which needs to be checked. And therefore, you're good to go. If it's stuff that needs to be checked, then you want it to be triple washed, and then you could just check 3 from the right, check it carefully. And if those 3 are bug free, then you have what's called, once again, a chazaka, right? Similar to what we had before by galat, right? An established state that it's okay.
I've gotten one before that was, it said triple wash and it actually had a worm, like, in it.
Yeah.
The ones
So
that say triple wash can be like infested because they're around other salad packs and like when they get moved through the trucks and
Yeah,
everything,
we
like
washed them before.
Yeah, that's why you do need to check. You need to check 3 of those leaves to make sure that it's
But
okay.
iceberg lettuce isn't a problem.
Iceberg is, yes.
Rabbi, one of the things.
Yeah, just 1 second. The sugar, except without hashgacha, this includes white, brown, and confectioners. So that's why this is a wonderful app to have, right? Because you want to know, does it need to have or not? Sugar substitutes, what would you say? What would you guess? They require, because that's a lot of processing that's going in over there. They will require. Yes, Esther.
So I was surprised to find out that fresh broccoli needs certification.
Yes.
Yeah.
That you can only use the stems, not the florets.
Yes. Why is that?
Because you can't get into
You
all
can't
the
get in
nooks
there.
and crannies.
You can't get into nooks and crannies, right? And that's why, yeah, it's a lot more expensive. But we get at OC Kosher, they have the Bodake and a couple of companies that. So how do they do it?
Well, I thought I was taught to, bag it around and, this sounds terrible. Cook it, immerse it in water and make sure that you agitate it
Okay,
and then dump the water and do this a couple of times.
let's see. Vegetables, broccoli.
Fresh.
Broccoli fresh. Right, so I'm just broccoli frozen. Requires certification. It is very impractical and close to impossible for the average consumer to properly check fresh or frozen broccoli. It is therefore highly recommended that only product with a reliable hashgacha be used. Broccoli stems, no florets, may be used without checking after rinsing with water, because that's like celery already, right? What you see is what you get. It's right. The problem. I see what they say about fresh. Probably say the same thing. Yeah, say exactly the same thing, right? So I would say it's pretty accepted not to do your own broccoli.
Unless
What do
you're
they
a
say
Mashgiach
about
yourself,
cauliflower?
right?
Cauliflower they let you do, but you've got to do it special.
Yeah, if not certified, it must be checked as one would check fresh cauliflower. 1 second. The washing and cleaning procedure for fresh is as follows: remove green leaves, cut head into 8 pieces, prepare a bowl of water mixed with vegetable wash, place cut cauliflower in the bowl and agitate for 30 seconds. Remove cauliflower from water. Check water using the thrip cloth method. Thrip cloth method is right. Then they go through a whole other thing. Yeah. Okay.
What about black herbs like thyme, fresh thyme, which I grow?
It's just leafy, so you probably just wash it.
It's just kind of
So
They're teeny tiny little leaves.
yeah. So those, if you can't get those which are certified,
If you grow it yourself, which I do.
yeah. So what one can do is you could put it into a clean, not used stocking and put that into your soup.
Oh.
And that way you get all the flavor, but it's like in a tea bag of sorts. And that way nothing's going to go swimming out from there.
Which vegetable are we talking about?
Like,
Thyme.
yeah, there's those different types.
I see.
What is a thrift cloth?
Can you
And
see
how do
the
you
expression?
and where do you get it?
Drip cloth is like where you have like there's a special cloth that's like a kind of like a fibrous material, but it's like kind of canvas.
Yeah.
And water soaks through it, so you have like a kind of a basket, and you put it over top and put another basket on it, and you pour the water that you've already rinsed the vegetables through, and you see if there's any bugs sticking to the paper, and you usually light it up like a light.
Okay.
So that's what the mashgiachs do at like restaurants most of the time. That's how they check. It's the most effective.
What kind of light?
It's like a literally like a light panel, so it's like a flat
it's
thing,
like,
and you just put it up to it. Yeah.
I've got one of those.
Yeah.
You can
But
see
where
the
do you
tiny
get
They
little things.
they sell those lights,
You get the
right?
cloth.
They sell those lights for, let's say, at a Michael's The
Yeah, I have
people
them
use
for my
that for
artwork.
tracing or
I use them for in my.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and
But
for
the
his artwork.
cloth, where would
It
you get
says
that?
fine silk cloth
And
can be
it's
purchased
Amazon.
from the CRC
Yeah, on Amazon.
or Amazon.
Star K has a website, they sell them there too.
Yeah.
That's the ones we use.
Yeah.
Amazon has thrifted.
Thank you.
Yes. So again, this CRC app is a real right. There's brachot, there's beverages, Chicago area restaurants. Okay, there's a food list, fruit and vegetable guide, koshering, liquor, non-food, over-the-counter medicine. Right, to know, if you want to get cough drops or cough syrup, often that's halachically that you can run into problems with that. This is a wonderful, and even has Passover 2022. They'll update that in time for Passover 2023.
How do you address like prescription medication then?
Okay, prescription medication that you're not eating.
Okay.
Okay. When it comes to vitamins, if you can get them with a Hechsher certified, there's a koshervitamins.com, right? Then that's best. But if you can't, then it doesn't need that. That's not derech achila. Derech achila means in a manner of eating, right? So it's not eating, and therefore that is not going to be an issue. Okay?
So what if it's processed and it's in a gel cap?
Gel can be problematic.
Yeah.
That's what I was asking.
Yes.
What about a gummy?
Yeah, the gummies and the gels are we avoid.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm talking about when it's just a tablet in a tablet form.
Because I was just saying for kids, like, so it'll have to be a kosher gummy then if it's a kid taking it versus.
Right.
Also, like omega-3 fatty acids often come in a gel thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tablets we're fine with. Okay. Once you get into certainly chewables or the flavor, let's say for kids, the Tylenol, whatever that is. So you want to, let's see what he says. Over-the-counter medicine. Cold
We used to sell these
and
amazing
flu.
sleep gummies, but they're not kosher, and they work so good for our kids. Like, I mean, because it was all natural.
Tylenol, Cold Max Night Liquid, for example, not recommended.
But I really liked the source of where it came from because it came from all organic crops and like the ingredients that were in it.
Good stuff.
But it just wasn't kosher.
Just a small problem.
It's okay. There's other ones out there that have more.
Yeah.
So Rabbi, what if you have something in a gel cap and you open it up and you just dump out what's in the gel cap? Does that still?
That might be bad for
No,
other
if it's
reasons.
powder, if it's powder.
Oh, if it's
gel
powder?
cap.
It shouldn't be bad for powder.
Tylenol, children's cold and cough and runny nose. Recommended. Not that they're recommending a runny nose, but they're saying that. Yeah.
So it depends on the Tylenol product.
Yeah, you just have to check. That's why they've done the legwork.
I'm thinking of like something, like a medication that's a powder inside the capsule.
No, that little plastic capsule is not a problem.
Okay.
We're talking about, all right, the little plastic capsule. We're talking about when it's like a gel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
That's, yeah. But the capsule, a lot of medication comes in a capsule like that. That's not an issue. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so coming back to the store, right? So when it comes to the middle of the store, the processed food, you'll be surprised, probably about between 40 and 60% of the products have a hechsher, have certification. It needs certification, and it will have certification, right? So if you want pancake mix, they'll have 5 different types of pancake mixes. Chances are 2 or 3 of them will have a hechsher. So it's just a matter of becoming familiarized with the different hechsherim, which ones are accepted, right? Unfortunately in Costco, they have I think it's a tablet. A lot of food there has a tablet K, which is not an Orthodox standard hechsher. A lot of things there, right?
You're talking about the round ones.
Yeah.
Oh, that looks like Shnei Luchot.
Yes, it looks like Shnei
But
Luchot.
then the ones with the square tablet is okay.
I think so. Yeah, I'm not picturing exactly.
I'm pretty
Right?
sure.
Yeah. Right. There's a company. The name of the company is Kosher Cheese,
Yes.
and it has that tablet K, which is not. Yeah. So the fact that the name of the company is Kosher Cheese could be a little bit misleading. Yeah. Yeah.
With the tablet that looks like, the rounded top.
Right. Like the Ten Commandment guys.
Yeah, but what's wrong with it?
It's not recommended.
It's what's wrong with it?
Yeah.
Those who are fully involved in kashrut don't view the standards of that organization to be regular Orthodox standards. Right? I can't tell you, particularly what it might be, but you won't find that on the list of. Right? There's another one that's a little bit similar from Denver, which is fine, but yeah. A lot of the processed, and not just the plain raw salmon, but the salmon that they sell at Costco with some sauce on it, whatever it is over there, frozen, right? Which one? Let me see.
Oh, it's scroll cake.
Yes.
So it looks like that.
Yeah.
That is fine.
That's good.
That is fine. Yeah.
I've seen that before.
Okay.
I just wanted to say about the CRC app. It always takes a long time to load, but when I'm at the store, it only loads the product list. So if you just click on agencies,
You can see that
Good.
immediately.
Yes.
automatically like show
Yeah.
you.
Good point. Everybody follow that? Yeah. So the CRC app, when you open it up, it takes a long time to update the list, but that's only the list of the products. But if you want to just check the agencies, right? So if you just click that right away, it'll give you all the agencies. If you want to check which food does it or does it not need a hechsher certification, that takes a while for it to load up. Okay.
I've seen that.
I just wanted to knock off it's getting late already. Okay. Yeah. Now, all of this is just getting us into our kitchen, right? Now we've introduced what can I bring into my kitchen, okay? Once it's in the kitchen, that is where the questions all start to come up, okay? So that is what we will start to focus on next week. This is all just what stuff should make it into the house, into the kitchen, right? But then the fun begins, right? And that's going to be predominantly the milk and meat questions that come up. And the way to best avoid that is by setting up your kitchen in a manner that you've got separate areas for your milk and for your meat, right? When someone's koshering their kitchen, besides, now that I would go and help them with actual koshering, but even more importantly than that is all right, let's organize this, right? If that's your meat dishes, then here's your meat silverware, and here's your meat pots and pans. And over here on the other wall, let's have, right, just to organize it in a way that you're not constantly bringing this to there and that to here, and that will avoid a lot of the problems. But we'll start to deal with that next week.
Because you have to even cook separate in a separate oven for dairy and meat, correct?
Right, pots, oven. Well, yes and no when it comes to oven. Okay. Meaning, we'll discuss it all. If I'm always going to keep one of the things closed, right? If whenever I'm cooking dairy in my oven, it's going to be enclosed, right? And then all right, so in that oven I could cook meat open, and as long as the oven is clean, then I could cook my dairy in there closed. Okay, we'll come to all that. Okay, all right, we just had to, this week you had to get into the kitchen. Okay, once we're in the kitchen, then we'll deal with how do we keep the things that we bought kosher. How do we make sure that that they remain kosher? All righty, very good.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, good night, everybody. Good seeing you.
Glad to have you back.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night.
Question about the
You guys have a couple minutes? No?
Yes.
Yeah.